I'm Doug, and welcome to the third video in the Celestion SpeakerMix Pro video series. This time around, we're going to be taking a very guitar player-centric approach to a great workflow, in this case using a single 3-channel amplifier and one instance of the SpeakerMix Pro plugin. But before we break down what you heard there at the top and then go into the next demos, wanted to recap with Ken and Joe from Celestion what SpeakerMix Pro is and what it does. At the most kind of snapshot level, what is SpeakerMix Pro and what does it do?
It's a mixer for a plugin that you can use as a mixer for mixing impulse responses in your DAW.
So there are really two elements to SpeakerMix Pro: the DSRs, the dynamic speaker responses, and then the application itself. Let's take a moment and, if you can, just explain what a DSR actually is and how it's different from a traditional IR.
So the dynamic speaker responses are a component level model of the loudspeaker system, the combination of speakers, cabinet, and microphone. And that entire system is very nonlinear and generates harmonics relative to how hard you drive it, whether that's the power amplifier or how hard you hit the strings. And all of that is synonymous with the feel of playing real guitar speakers.
Workflow being the operative phrase here, the ability to take a great sounding tube amp, plug it in, let the tubes get warmed up, run it out into a reactive load box like the 2-Notes Captor X while you're firing up your DAW, and then loading one instance of SpeakerMix Pro is kind of the name of the game. So we're going to use the different channel strips inside the plugin to load different combinations of speakers with different mic placements. All right, taking a look over to the left there, you can see that channel strip 1 is illuminated. When you click on each of the channel strips, it'll automatically tell you which speaker you have selected, or I should say dynamic speaker response you've selected, presuming there's one selected. In this particular case, you can see it's the greenback. At the bottom of the channel strip, it will also tell you which microphone was used, which in this case was the SM57. Now, the interesting thing about all of these demos is I opted just to use the SM57, and I found it made for a great workflow, kind of using one microphone where you just move that microphone around, as opposed to my favorite blend of the 121 and the 57. I was again reminded about how much I love the SM57. Right to the left of the speaker graphic there, you can see the microphone placement slider thing. And basically, you can just click and drag until you find the sweet spot. In this particular case, that fat setting was awesome. All right, last but definitely not least, I had the Z curve at 3 for all these demos. And basically, to recap what that is, at 0, it's kind of where you would traditionally set it for a clean amp. All the way up is where you would set it for a super high gain amplifier. Generally speaking, and especially with this amplifier, as you started to turn it up, you got a little bit more harmonic bloom as you continue to turn it up. 3 seemed to be the sweet spot. That clean tone at the top was one of my favorite clean tones that I've ever played, because this whole workflow is great. All right, the last video was 18 minutes. A lot of talking, but I think a lot of detail. This time, what we really want to do is let, hopefully, the guitar do the talking. So the next 2 demos in particular, there's a lot of playing in them. So with that said, let's take a listen to Channel 2 of the Carvin Legacy 3 and SpeakerMix Pro. Per the callouts during the demo, that was a combination of an Alnico Blue and a greenback. Now, initially, I started off with the Alnico Blue, and I just started off again with that one SM57 guitar panned dead center. I moved the mic a little bit further away from the center of the dust cap, or at least the virtual dust cap, to make it a little bit darker sounding, but I still wanted a little tiny bit more body, which again is why I added in the greenback with the microphone set at the balance setting. Super happy with what I got. By the way, in case you were wondering, there's a reverb that's on all three demos. That is the model of the Lexicon 224. That is from Universal Audio. And on the demo you just heard and the one coming up, I also added to precision delay, which has got a dotted eighth note on one side, quarter note on the other. Now, speaking of the demo that's coming up, I'm now moving over to a 412 cabinet loaded with, if you will, the amp appropriate speaker, which is a Celestion Vintage 30. That amp is voiced for those speakers, but I really enjoyed trying different things and was super happy with the end results. But now across these first channel strips here, I've got the exact sounds that I would want to go to for these three different channels. I'm good to go. Again, it's just a matter of firing up the amp, reactive load box, making sure that's in there, and then going into the plug-in and boom, just pulling up the appropriate channel strip, or with the last demo, two of them. All right, so again, this one is a Celestion Vintage 30 and 412 cabinet, again, mic'd up with an SM57. But if you take a look over there, you're going to see there's a little yellow light illuminated for delay. What that's done is it's basically taken the direct signal and panned that to one side and added, in this particular case, a 15 millisecond offset and panned that to the other side. The end result is something a little bit like Carlos Santana a la Europa meets Alan Holdsworth with a little tiny bit of Steve Morse thrown in. I was super happy with the end result of this. Again, the idea is it allowed me to just kind of get a workflow that allowed me to in turn kind of get into my vibe as I looped the track, and the combination of melody and soloing, just being able to hang out and linger and really find a new sound, and for me, kind of a new voice. I love Alan Holdsworth, but I've never quite endeavored to go quite as far as I did in my attempts to sound like Alan Holdsworth as I did in this one. In any case, I want to thank you for checking out this video. I look forward to seeing you, hopefully, in the fourth video in the Celestion SpeakerMix Pro video series. Thanks again for watching. Cheers.